Have you ever felt overwhelmed by the demands of life? The responsibilities of holding a job, of paying your bills and your rent? Have you ever wanted to just run away from the world and live a totally different life? As a Pokemon? Luckily for you, it's possible for humans to become Pokemon, and for Pokemon to become humans. The Pokemon games, anime, and movies are full of different methods for people to shed their human lives and live as Pokemon. Alola, trainers! Today we're taking a look at every way humans can turn into Pokemon. There are dozens of examples of Pokemon transformations throughout the Pokemon franchise, some of which are confirmed to be canon to the media that they appear in, while others are presented as rumors, myths, or fairy tales. Today we're going to take a look at confirmed ways that you, a human, can turn into a Pokemon, and we'll briefly touch on myths and other unconfirmed methods. Now, a word of warning. Several of these methods only allow a trainer to turn into one specific type of Pokemon, and most of them are a one-way trip. So you'll need to be totally sure about your desire to be a Pokemon before you attempt any of them. And heads up, this video contains spoilers for multiple Pokemon games and adaptations, including the Detective Pikachu games and movie, and pretty much all of the Mystery Dungeon series. Method 1. Fusion. Fusion is the process of combining two or more creatures into a single entity. There are several instances of multiple Pokemon fusing together, like Meltan combining to form a Melmetal, and a handful of instances of humans and Pokemons fusing into a new hybridized form. But for the purpose of this video, we're only concerned with fusions that result in a human mind in a Pokemon body. This is actually the earliest Pokemon transformation that was introduced, dating all the way back to the first generation Pokemon games. Before you reach the second gym in Cerulean City, you need to take a detour to Bill's house, where you discover that a lab accident has fused Bill with a Pokemon. The accident seems to be similar to the one in the 1986 film The Fly, where a teleporter accident merges a human scientist and a fly into a single creature. Bill was working on a matter transporter and ended up sharing a chamber with the Pokemon. Fortunately for him, the accident gave him the body of a Pokemon, but didn't affect his mind. And there's no evidence that his human body was running around with a Pokemon's mind in control. Thanks to remakes and comic adaptations, we get to see the same scene play out 5 different times, with Bill turning into at least 4 different Pokemon. We can't tell what Pokemon he's fused with in the original games, since so many share the same overworld sprite, but in Pokemon Fire Red and Leaf Green, he's been merged with a Clefairy, while in Let's Go Pikachu and Let's Go Eevee, he's a Nidorino. We even get to see the separated Nidorino escape at the end of the scene. In the Pokemon Adventures manga, he's been merged with a Rattata, keeping his human head with Rattata's ears, teeth, and whiskers. And in Pokemon Zensho, he's been combined with a Nidoran male. Of all the methods discussed in this video, this one seems to be the best for prospective Pokemon transformees. It appears to be safe. There's no indication that Bill lost any part of his human mind, but he can still communicate easily with humans. And it seems like any Pokemon is a viable transformation option, as long as you have a large enough pair of teleporters. Most importantly, it's easily reversible. In every version of the scene, Bill regains his human form thanks to the help of a child who just needs to push a button while Bill is in the chamber. We see fusion with a similar end result in the Detective Pikachu spin-offs. The titular character, Detective Pikachu, is the human protagonist's father, Harry Goodman, fused with his partner Pikachu. This time, no teleporter is involved. Instead, Mewtwo fuses the pair together in order to save Harry's life, after he was gravely injured in a traffic accident. In both the games and the movie, Mewtwo is shown to be able to fuse humans and Pokemon practically at will. At the climax of the film, countless bystanders are merged with their partner Pokemon, and the transformation appears to be permanent without the intervention of Mewtwo shortly afterwards. The second Detective Pikachu game clarified that the reason Detective Pikachu has amnesia is because Mewtwo needed to suppress Harry's memories in order to keep both his mind and Pikachu's intact in the same body.
The other times we see humans and Pokemon fuse this way, it seems like the humans have their memories and are in complete control, overriding the Pokemon's minds. However, it's also possible that the stronger of the two minds would win out, potentially leading to a disastrous end for a human whose partner was an Alakazam or similar highly intelligent Pokemon.
Method 2. Reincarnation. We know that ghosts are real in the Pokemon world, and I don't mean ghost-type Pokemon. Marowak's ghost haunted the Pokemon Tower in Lavender Town, and there are several ghosts that you can catch a glimpse of throughout the generations. But sometimes, the spirits of the deceased can come back as Pokemon.
Several Pokédex entries reference this phenomenon, most famously Yamask. Most of Yamask's Pokédex entries mention that they're the spirits of humans and that the masks they carry are their former faces. Several entries also mention that they retain their memories from the previous life, or that they occasionally look at their masks and cry. Now, this one's unconfirmed, but the incredibly popular ghost-type Pokemon, Gengar, may also be a deceased human. The Pokédex entry in Moon says it was once human, and it tries to take the lives of other humans in order to find a traveling companion. Other entries suggest that human spirits can possess nearby objects when they pass on, becoming Pokemon as a result. Phantom, for example, is a rotten tree stump possessed by the spirit of a deceased child, while Frostlass are created by the soul of a woman frozen in the mountain possessing an icicle. Aside from Yamask, there's little to indicate that these former humans retain any memory of their former lives. Some, like Frostlass, seem to have some human traits, but these can also be explained as a strong emotion, like resentment or loneliness carrying over from their previous lives. Several more Pokemon are stated to have come from the deceased, or are formed by combining multiple spirits, but there's no clarification as to whether the spirits were human or Pokemon. Spiritomb, for example, is a group of 108 souls bound to a single stone, but there's no concrete evidence that any human souls are included. In fact, classified documents from C. Mauville suggest that only Pokemon souls are involved, but that's a story for a different time. Pokemon as reincarnated humans creates an interesting problem: Pokemon breeding. You can breed two Yamask together and get a third one, but does that mean that there's a queue of spirits waiting to be reincarnated? Or did someone have to pass in order for you to get an egg? Or are some of these Pokemon former humans, while others are newly born Pokemon?
This is definitely not a transformation method to attempt, but if you're near the end of your natural life, maybe try to keep an icicle, a cold cup of tea, a tree stump, and a ball of dried grass nearby, just in case. Method 3. Transformed by powerful Pokemon. Some Pokemon are powerful enough that they can transform humans into other Pokemon virtually at will. We've already talked about Mewtwo's ability to fuse humans and Pokemon, but in this case, we're talking about a full physical transformation from human to Pokemon.
Ninetales also appears to have some magic outside of its moves and abilities. One of them was able to create vivid, realistic illusions, and another was able to curse people and turn them into Pokemon. We see curses referenced in several of Ninetales' Pokédex entries, but the only time we get any more information about them is in Pokemon Mystery Dungeon Red and Blue Rescue Team, and the remake, Pokemon Mystery Dungeon Rescue Team DX. In these games, we hear a legend about a selfish trainer grabbing a Ninetales' tail, and subsequently being cursed to one day be reborn as a Pokemon. Later, we find out that the legend was not only true, but we've spent a good chunk of the game interacting with the former human. So grabbing a Ninetales' tail could result in a curse to become a Pokemon. But since some sources say that each tail has its own power, you could end up with a totally different curse instead. Ninetales itself is another example of a Pokemon that might be several human spirits merged together, but that legend hasn't been confirmed yet. In the same games, we also meet a Gardevoir who took the brunt of the Ninetales curse in order to protect its trainer. That Gardevoir became an agent of spirits, who picked you, the protagonist, to become a Pokemon and save the Pokemon world. In this case, you volunteered to become a Pokemon and save the world, but also decided to give up your memories. This is actually an example of an isekai story, where your character, apparently a normal human from the real world, gets pulled into the Pokemon world in the body of a Pokemon. We see similar situations in Mystery Dungeon Gate to Infinity, where the Voice of Life, using a Hydreigon as an avatar, recruited the player and several other humans to destroy the Bitter Cold, an object that feeds on the negative emotions of Pokemon. And again in Super Mystery Dungeon, where Mew's power caused you to be reincarnated in order to save the world from an entity known as Dark Matter. The last Pokemon we know is capable of turning humans into other Pokemon is Darkrai. In Pokemon Mystery Dungeon, Explorers of Time and Explorers of Darkness, Darkrai attacked a human and a Grovyle while they were traveling backwards in time, resulting in the human losing their memories and turning into a Pokemon. This transformation seems to have been an accident, but Darkrai assumed the human's amnesia was sufficient to prevent any interference with its schemes. We see Darkrai turn another human into a Licky Licky in the Rise of Darkrai movie. In this instance, the change required Darkrai's Dark Void attack, Palkia manipulating space, and a Licky Licky dreaming about becoming its trainer. In both cases, Darkrai is only able to transform humans into Pokemon when another powerful Pokemon is manipulating time and space. And even then, both instances appear to be accidents.
Method 4. Magic. For the most part, humans in the Pokemon world are totally normal. But there are a few instances of humans exhibiting psychic powers, and, in at least one case, actual magic.
In the anime episode Hocus Pokemon, Ash and the gang help a magician named Lily gather ingredients for a spell that would allow Ash to read a Pokemon's mind. After retrieving the Apalm Tears and Parasect Spores necessary for the spell, and using Pikachu's Thunderbolt to complete it, the smoke clears and reveals that Ash has turned into a Pikachu. In this new body, Ash acts more like a Pikachu than his normal self, implying that he really did get into Pikachu's head. Unfortunately, we don't have much information about how long the spell lasts, since the episode ended with Ash playing with his fellow Pokemon, and the next episode began with him regaining his human form, with no indication of how much time had passed.
We don't see similar magic often, but the spells in Hocus Pokemon seem reasonably easily to replicate. There's no reason that someone with a translated copy of Lily's spellbook wouldn't be able to replicate this spell. Method 5. Watch Pokemon movies.
In the book, I'm Not Pikachu, multiple children are transformed into Pokemon after watching an unidentified Pokemon movie. Since the movie stars Pikachu, Mewtwo, and Mew, the Pokemon the children find themselves turned into, the most likely culprit is Pokemon, the first movie. Dozens of children went through this process, but a good night's sleep was enough to revert them back to their normal human form, making this a safe and repeatable method.
I've personally conducted an experiment to verify this hypothesis, but after watching the film a dozen times, I've been unable to confirm that it can turn members of its audience into Pokemon. Maybe this method only works on children, or maybe only in a theater, or when some other requirement is met. I'll continue with the experiment, of course, but in the spirit of academic collaboration, I invite you, as fellow Pokemon researchers, to repeat the experiment yourself and report the results in the comments. Method 6. Enter the world of darkness. The last method we're discussing is the most mysterious because we only get to see it one time in the Poketoons episode, Help, I've Turned Into a Gengar. In this Poketoon, we find out about the Haunted Twilight Staircase, a staircase in a school in Japan where if you climb to the very top of it, at sunset, when that top step is shrouded in darkness, you'll wake up in the world of darkness, transformed into a ghost. The episode follows a young girl named Hillary who climbs to the top of the stairs and comes to as a Gengar, a ghost-type Pokemon, surrounded by other ghost-type Pokemon like Misdreavus and Dreepy. She proceeds to haunt her friends throughout the night, and they don't apparently have any memory of her disappearing, And then, as the sun rises, she wakes up at the top of the stairs again, with no time having passed and with her friends having no memory of the experience. This suggests that it's not actually a true Pokemon transformation, but rather some kind of a dream or hallucination. I propose that rather than a transformation, this was actually caused by Gengar using hypnosis or a similar ability in order to gain companionship for a night. After all, from that Pokédex entry that we discussed earlier, Gengar is a former human who is seeking companionship. So it would make sense for them to look for companionship without having to actually cause another human to pass away. Those are all the confirmed methods to become a Pokemon. But there are a few others that show up in myths and legends. The famous story of a psychic child that woke up as a Kadabra, for example, is actually the plot of a book in the Pokemon world rather than a documented phenomenon. A similar legend exists in the Kitakami region with the troublesome child who turned into a Lombre. There are also several myths, especially in the Sinnoh region, about humans and Pokemons living together and changing freely between two forms. Sitting at the same table and living if there was no difference between them. But these are just legends, and there's no evidence that wearing the skin of a Pokemon can cause you to change into that form, or that a Pokemon can simply shed its skin to live as a human. Alright, that's all I've got for you today. I know there's a few methods that we haven't covered, such as the rumored surgery to turn athletes into Iron Hands, but anything like that that's unconfirmed we'll cover in a future video. As always, make sure that you like and subscribe. It really helps the channel. And I'll see you next time. Alola.